First, let's briefly answer some questions about spaced repetition improvements. So we got a few questions about that, and mostly I'm not going to go through all the questions, but the answer to that encapsulates most of them is what are, what are we planning on improvements to the spaced repetition system? There's two main things that we've talked about so far. One of them is incorporating reference reliance into assessing how successful a student's performance is. Like there's right now the algorithms are based, at least outside of the diagnostic, the algorithms are based on like your accuracy. Did you get it? Did you get the question right or wrong? But really, there's a whole gradation there between like, did you get the question right after peeking back at the reference one time for 15 seconds? Did you get the question right without looking at the reference at all? Did you get the question right after you looked back at the reference like 5 times for a minute each? Like there's a big difference, and so we gotta get that built into the spaced repetition system eventually.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we always talk about is what would a tutor do, right? Whenever we're trying to like, how should the system behave? So if you had a tutor sitting next to a student and you say, factor this quadratic, and the student looks at it for a second and then sits down and goes, figures it out and does it no problem, you'd be like, great. Or if they do it really fast, they're like, yeah, bang, bang, bang. You're like, all right, yeah, okay, you know, do it. All right, well, let me try it with a negative number or a fraction. Then you give them a couple variations. Okay. Another one, you sit there and they're like, thinking. You as a tutor be like, and don't think they remember this so well. If they took a long time. Now, if they not only took a long time, but then they went back to their notes, I looked at a textbook, as a tutor, you'd be like, okay, well, clearly the student needs more practice. They're forgetting this stuff. And so then you would make a mental note, the student is not really strong on this material yet. And what you would do is you say, we need more practice probably now, and I need to move forward some practice that I was going to do later, sooner, because this is starting to fall away. Now, and if you're seeing that behavior on lots of things, you're like, we need to slow things down. We are moving too fast and the student is becoming overwhelmed and they're not able to remember the things they've learned. They need more practice. We need to shorten the repetition intervals. And so we need to take that. And in order to do that, now we do that already when they don't do well on review, they struggle and they get partial credit or no credit. Like that is incorporated into how well they know that topic as well as their overall pace of learning. But what we haven't been doing so far, and what you're saying is right, is that this like secondary sort of behavior, which is they are accessing additional scaffolding to get something done.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like our initial approach is, I mean, we just hit on the first order effects. Like, did they get the question right or wrong? Because that's what you do when you're building a product, and you just have to solve the biggest problems first, and then later down the line come back for second order improvements and things. So that's a second order improvement in the spaced repetition system. But also not just the spaced repetition system, but also just the whole kind of pipeline as a student goes through a lesson, coaching them on what to do. Like one thing that I have seen students, even adult students, do a lot is look back at the reference too often, like thinking that it's free to look back at the reference. When in reality, if you are trying to recall something from your head and you look back at the reference instead of trying your best to lift that weight off of your long-term memory, if you look back at the reference, you're basically just letting the spotter lift the weight for you.
Yeah, so you're weightlifting and you're like, I can't get it, and the guy behind just lifts it up for you. You're like, oh, okay, well,
yeah,
you didn't really lift the weight. I mean, most of it, but you needed help. And so therefore, if I'm your trainer, I need to lower the weight because you're not quite ready for that. You're gonna injure yourself. It's not gonna be productive. you
Yeah,
know.
but also like you don't want your spotter. Sometimes people will will ask for the spotter's help before they even get to the point of trying really hard. It's like just
Yes.
the moment that it stops becoming super easy, they're like, okay, look back at the example. When in reality, that is the moment when you are getting the most bang for buck out of recalling the information.
The
And
struggle,
yeah,
it's the struggle during the active recall process is when you are strengthening the memory, right? Or
mhm,
re-imprinting the
exactly.
memory, I think is actually how it works. But um, yeah, so that's critical. And I think, yeah, so okay, I don't want to go on and on,
Yeah,
but that's
yeah, yeah.
really what we need to build in is we already have this data. I mean, we track, the behavioral data so that we can do this kind of a thing because it's important. Because you're like, well, why? You're just like, well, how can we get this to behave as good as an expert tutor? I'm paying $150 an hour to sit right next to me, who has a perfect memory. Okay, well then that tutor is taking into consideration uh, a lot of more things than just whether you got the question right or wrong.
Yeah, and the tutor is actually instructing the student, hey, like, don't look back at the reference right away. Like, I want you to try to pull this from memory. So that's what we need to also do.
Coach
And
them
like,
is the
yeah, coach them
evaluating them
in
and
task
coaching them.
coaching. Yeah, there's an active.
100%.
There's two. Yeah, right. There's the two sides to it. One side is like just getting those second order, third order interpretations of what is actually happening with the student looking back at the reference. But yeah, in addition to that, it's just like, well, try to coach the student not to actually look back at the reference unless they absolutely need to, because that is a way that sometimes students kind of shoot themselves in the foot
Kind of
with their
shortcut. They
spaced repetition
shortchange the
system.
learning process. They shortchange
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah,
You
or if they
know,
have like the worked example up in another tab and then they're looking at that while solving the problem, like that is the worst. Never do that.
yeah,
Because yeah,
exactly.
it's just misleading
That is again, you're
yeah.
cheating. This is
Yeah. So in summary, the two aspects are there are some improvements that we can make to the repetition spaced repetition system itself, incorporating more of this information in. But there's also improvements that we need to make on just aligning people with the behavior that the proper learning behavior to give the system a good signal. Well, to two things to one, like, get the most they can out of the spaced repetition, not saying spotter lift the weight for me as soon as it looks like I start to strain a little bit, and then two, also to just give the system an accurate understanding of what's actually going on.
and by the fourth thing I said I had to do before I got back to the machine learning was some in lesson coaching. I have to do some work on that because it's blocking some other people who are working on that. So that's another. It's a
Yeah.
big one. It's an intra task. We call it intra task. Information and analysis and all stuff there's a ton of low hanging fruit there for us. I think we can really take things up a notch or two, right?
Yeah, totally.